I've represented people who have been accused of things they didn't do, and that's why I'm listening. And I can tell you about all the stuff leading up to. I'm really very disappointed in the way our Democratic colleagues withheld this information. I'm very suspicious of how all this came out. All the media contacts, hiring a lawyer and taking a polygraph makes me more suspicious. This was meant to be anonymous, so that's the one thing that has been different.
Do you believe her?
How do you think that Rachel...
I want to hear what he's got to say.
Do you believe her?
I don't believe that it's credible that she didn't know we offered to come. I still want to... I don't understand anything I didn't know before. She can't say how she got there and how she left, and I'm wanting to hear more detail, and I've got to decide, I think like anybody in any legal setting would, is there any corroboration to the allegation? There are people we know that were there, what do they say? And fill in the gaps and do the best you can. She seems like something happened to this woman, and the question for me is that I've got a man who's lived, I think, an incredibly productive life, adamantly denying it, and a lot of the details, I don't know how you fill them in. I don't know how she got there, I don't know how she left, but somebody brought her and somebody took her away, and if it's the trauma, if it happened on that day in that place, that's an important event for me. Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
That was Senator Lindsey Graham, member of the Judiciary Committee, who's been there. Now Senator Leahy, Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. Let's listen.
The questions that she's very professional. You have to ask the question, why don't they ask their own questions?
Why do you think? I think that they look muted. They're sitting there. They look like they want to respond, but they made a decision not to really do their constitutional duty and participate in this hearing. That's their choice. But what I think the big lesson that came out of this is that this woman is extraordinary. She's calm. She's honest. And I think that's what our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are seeing today.
What are you looking to hear from Judge Kavanaugh?
And maybe they're afraid somebody's going to
doing the job
ask,
she
why
was
are you
given?
hiding the other witnesses?
She's
Why don't you
doing
call
the
them?
job that they asked
What are
her
you looking
to
to hear
do.
from Judge Kavanaugh?
Senator Leahy, Senator Klobuchar speaking to reporters in the hallway there. I think we've got Senator COONS in a different hallway. Let's listen to that.
I think it helps reduce the sense that we have two competing parties sort of fighting each other through their respective senators, and elevates the sense that what we're here to do is to listen to Dr. Ford. So I'm encouraged that at least this morning's session has been respectful, deliberate, measured, more than not. I came this morning with really great trepidation, concerned that what we would see was the prosecution of Dr. Ford. That's not what we've seen. We've seen more than not measured questions and her answering them in a very concise, very forthright way.
Have you heard anything from the Republican question? Have you heard anything from the Republican question?
Casey Hunt right now, who's standing by with more for us. Casey?
I don't know any more than I know before. I do know that the people claimed to have been at the party, said nothing happened. I don't know how she got home, and I don't know how she got there. I think something happened to Dr. Ford. I'm going to listen to Brett Kavanaugh, who adamantly denies it. The one thing I can tell you, I'm more upset than ever by the way my Democratic colleagues have handled this. They knew about this in July. There was a polygraph August the 10th that we get September the 26th. We offered to go out there. She said she couldn't come here because of fear of flying. None of that is holding water. We'll see what happens.
Senator, if you believe her, how could you vote yes if you believe her? Senator?
Casey Hunt there in the scrum with Senator Lindsey Graham, Senator Klobuchar at another microphone. This is Capitol Hill, folks. Let's listen.
So far this morning that potentially changes what you guys want to ask of Judge Kavanaugh later today?
I don't think so. I mean, she has been very solid. I think time and time again, as most of America must be, we're frustrated that we don't have that FBI background check reopened. She said she could better recall the time period if she knew when Mark Judge worked at the Safeway, and he's hiding out at a beach house in Delaware, and she's simply trying to get that information. And the FBI could open that up at either the request of the president president or the Republican senators asking the president to open it up. That hasn't happened. And I thought the other interesting thing was that there appeared to be some initial objection to even putting the polygraph test in, when that is used all the time by the Defense Department, by the FBI, by the CIA for job interviews. And this is a job interview for the highest court in the land, and we're simply trying to put in some records that show her truthfulness.
What was the point of those maps, do you think, that Mitchell?
I don't know. I guess we will have to find out, but she answered that question honestly.
What do you think that Rachel Mitchell is driving at?
Survivor of sexual assault, what does this mean for the overall movement? What does this mean for other victims of sexual assault when she testifies like this?
As I said, for so long, these kinds of cases have been just swept under the rug. And things that happened in a house were not allowed to be in a courthouse. Well, that's different today. They are in the courthouse of America, and they will make a decision. They will help, I hope, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to make a decision about who's going to serve in the highest courthouse of the land. One last thing.
What do you think of how Rachel Mitchell, and do you know what she's driving at? What do you think she's driving at with her?
The height? What are they trying to rush through?
Thank you, Senator Leahy.
Thank you for your support.
Her job. She's just asking questions.
Senator, do you find it choppy though, going from 5 minutes of her to 5 minutes on your side? Or
Yeah, this is not a trial. This is basically a job interview of Brett Kavanaugh for the highest court of the land. So we have an opportunity to ask questions. And I would hope the people of America would see that. We're being professional. We're not pontificating up there and using all our time to give some speech. We're asking her straightforward questions. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.